Welcome everyone to Enigma's Analysis. I'm your host, Mr. Enigma, and today we've got a division that is always tightly contested, but rarely that impressive. I found the only piece of Texans merchandise outside of Houston, fitting considering that the Texans always win this division, but then let some wildcard team from the division surpass them in the playoffs. Last time around, the Titans went on a hot run. Let's talk about what happens this season. Alright, as you piece together from these videos, the Texans are not my team, but I do enjoy them, and I watched a lot of their games last season, and I can tell you that they are one of the worst good teams I've ever seen. They are frustrating to watch. Their coach and GM, Bill O'Brien, obviously must be good given that they've been successful and won the division a bunch of times, but he has more deficiencies than any good head coach I've ever seen. Clock management's a big one. He seems to get into a lot of third and long situations. When he's in short yardage situations, he seems to panic and not know what to do. He's also a terrible general manager, but we'll get into that a little more later. If you like the Texans, there's a good chance that you do because of quarterback Deshaun Watson. Obviously one of the better quarterbacks in the league. He often works miracles and then screws up some of the easy stuff. Seriously, this guy can make all kinds of crazy throws, do all kinds of wacky things on his legs, and then miss wide open receivers by beaming the ball straight into the dirt. I call that Donovan McNabb syndrome. And a lot of the times he scrambles in situations where he'd have to be big enough to bowl defenders over, and he's not. It's really pretty amazing that he stayed healthy as long as he has. And for the love of God, can they stop running him out of shotgun on third and short or even fourth and short? But Watson often has to put the team on his back, and he's going to be doing that a lot this year too.
Oh, he's open.
So for some reason, they let Carlos Hyde go at running back during the offseason, even though he ran for over 1,000 yards. And now they have a potentially washed-up David Johnson from the Arizona Cardinals and an underutilized Duke Johnson as a third down catching back. How did they get Duke Johnson? Well, funny you should ask. Apparently, DeAndre Hopkins, arguably the best wide receiver in the league, asked for some kind of contract restructuring or something like that, which most big-name players do at some point or another. It does not mean you have to indulge them. But Bill O'Brien decided this was cause to get rid of DeAndre Hopkins, even though he had a few years left on his contract. And instead of doing as well as, say, the Vikings with Stephon Diggs, getting a first-round pick for him, Bill O'Brien seemingly took the first offer thrown at him without calling any other teams, and somehow thought that a second-round pick and the fantasy football darling of 3 or 4 years ago would somehow be worth trading for the best receiver in football. Seriously, were the Cardinals just the first team that he talked to? Shop around, Bill. Boy, it must be dangerous to let Bill O'Brien on eBay. Yeah, most of the auctions on this website have the game listed at like $100, but this $1,600 one has a buy it now option. I like the sound of that. Buy now. In any case, it's not just that Hopkins was awesome, it's that Deshaun Watson and company became very dependent on him to bail them out in bad situations. Like I said, the Texans would often find themselves in 3rd and 15 situations, and their only way out of it was for Watson to hurl up a prayer across the middle of the field into double coverage, and Hopkins would still somehow snag it and move the chains for them. It's not like the Texans didn't have any other good offensive playmakers, it's just that I think Watson just looked at him as a bailout option. And really, who can blame him? If I had DeAndre Hopkins as a wide receiver, I would throw it to him all the time too. But the point being, he's going to have to learn to spread the ball around, because he does have a lot of good receivers on the team now. He just doesn't have a great one. He's got Brandon Cooks, who's one concussion away from never playing football again. He's still got Will Fuller, who is very good when healthy, which is never. He's got Randall Cobb and Kenny Stills. He often has Duke Johnson for check down throws. And even Darren Fells and Jordan Akins at tight end are good at pass catching. All potentially good targets, but none of them really strike fear in the heart of a defense. So, alright Watson, your move. Since a big trade with the Miami Dolphins last season, the offensive line has gone from terrible across the board to pretty good on pass protection, just really bad at run blocking. Of course, Laramie Tunzel at left tackle is one of the best in the league, although he did incur a lot of penalties. Left guard Max Sharping and right tackle Titus Howard were both rookies last season, but the O-line personnel will remain the same unless a returning Senio Kelmite, I'm sure I'm butchering that name, unless he returns into the starting lineup after being injured last season. Sadly, as the years progress and this becomes Deshaun Watson's team, the once fearsome Texans defense that used to carry the team is an utter shell of its former self. It just keeps getting worse and worse each year. J.J. Watt is still more or less J.J. Watt when he's healthy, but of course the injuries just keep piling up as he gets older. They lost DJ Reader at tackle, and they really don't have anyone capable of replacing him at all. And then guys like Charles Omenihu don't exactly inspire a ton of excitement. Zach Cunningham and Benardrick McKinney do a pretty solid job at inside linebacker, although we've probably seen the best McKinney's going to give us in his career. Outside, I've always thought that Whitney Merciless was super underrated, but just in general, the pass rush needs a lot of help. If the Texans have had one lingering problem for years other than the offensive line, it's been the secondary. It was awful last year, it's probably going to be even worse this year. On paper, I'd say Bradley Roby and Gary and Conley at cornerback are in a okay, not great category. Meanwhile, Justin Reed is good and getting better at free safety, so there's a bright spot. But Jalen Watkins ain't going to cut it at strong safety. And given that the pass rush is abysmal, this average-ish looking secondary is probably going to look like absolute hot garbage. So basically, the Texans have to be offensive juggernauts, which I'm not sure they have the personnel to do. I think they'll pull it off occasionally and win some games, but it's not a recipe for success. And you're really going to have to keep the expectations for the defense low this season. Now, Bill O'Brien has been finding ways to win the division for a while now, so I'll give him some benefit of the doubt. I certainly don't think he'll let them be terrible, but for a team with so many issues, 7-9 seems very realistic. Yeah, in fact, I would be surprised if the Texans did any better than 7-9. Speaking of 7-9, we have the Indianapolis Colts, who had that underwhelming record last season. But you gotta give them a little bit of leeway because they thought they were going to have Andrew Luck, and instead they had to roll with okay, but really not inspiring Jacoby Brissett. Boy, talk about going from sheer excitement to safe. Realistic. I'm gonna have that nice big thick juicy steak, and then later on, if I get hungry again, I'll have these ramen noodles. Wait, what? There's no steak? I gotta just make do with these noodles all day? In fact, that's kind of the vibe this whole Colts organization has had for a while now. They're a very safe team. You know, they often avoid disaster, they're sensibly coached, but they're a little boring. You know, it's like when you have a really diverse group of people at some kind of gathering and you all settle on some restaurant that everyone can agree on. Everybody's okay with it, but nobody's really excited. Oh, Ruby Tuesdays. Okay, sure. Anyway, they have Phillip Rivers under center now, which, for better or worse, that'll definitely make them more interesting. Rivers, of course, has had a Hall of Fame career, but he had a really bad one last season. To be fair, he had a ton of injuries on his offensive line, but it's also entirely fair to say that he legitimately threw some games away that they had a shot at winning. Was he just doing it because he figured he had to force the ball down the field and manufacture some points? Tough to say, but the bottom line is he's got a fresh start in Indianapolis. And Colts fans just have to remember that in 2018, he actually played extremely well. Anyway, if anybody's going to help Indy push the ball down the field, Phillip Rivers is definitely the guy to do it. The rushing duo of Marlon Mack and hot draft prospect from the second round, Jonathan Taylor, should be good. The wide receiver core is really not the most exciting. T.Y. Hilton's still an often awesome number one despite having a down year last season. But then you got Paris Campbell in his second year after an injury-plagued first season, and then a rookie second round draft pick before you get to a deep list of names, but none of them really pop. I guess if you can't have any studs, then having a lot of options is at least a good thing. Of course, tight ends Jack Doyle and Trey Burton, who they got from the Bears, now that he's not injured, can help out quite a bit. Still, the one thing you could say about Chargers teams of recent years was that Phillip Rivers always had nice weapons at his disposal. Let's see how he does when he doesn't have such a loaded arsenal. Or who knows, maybe they'll just lean more on the running game. Of course, everyone will have forever and a day to get wide open because the Colts have the best offensive line in the league. Seriously, when you talk offensive lines in football, always a riveting conversation, by the way, all you ever hear is Quentin Nelson, Quentin Nelson, Quentin Nelson. But yes, everyone's returning, and that's obviously awesome news for the Colts. The only criticism you can really give any of the guys on the O-line is that right guard Mark Glowinski is much better at run blocking than pass protection. Otherwise, the Colts are in awesome shape there. Now, the Colts didn't have a first-round draft pick this year because they traded it for DeForest Buckner from the 49ers. Buckner's a monster in his own right, and now he gets to join up with Justin Houston on the line. Wow. Denico Autry's pretty good too. And then Al-Qadim Muhammad is a good run stuffer, but doesn't offer much in the pass rush. You got names like Grover Stewart, Sheldon Day, and Taquan Lewis as part of the rotation. So the defensive line, particularly the interior, should go from being kind of a weakness to more of a team strength. If you're talking Colts linebackers, you gotta talk Darius Leonard because he's gone all-pro in both of his first 2 seasons in the league. So yeah, he's good. He was hurt for a bit last year, and Anthony Walker had to hold down the position. Walker's fine in pass coverage, but obviously he's no Darius Leonard. And then Bobby, is it Okereke? He had a strong rookie season and is really good against the run. The linebacking group is strong for the Colts. In the secondary, Kenny Moore has played quite well at cornerback and is himself very good at stuffing runs. Rock Ya-Sin, yes, that is a real name apparently, was not very impressive in his rookie season. And then Xavier Rhodes, who they acquired from the Vikings, was once an all-pro, but was downright lousy before they let him go. Khari Willis at free safety also goes into his second year after showing some promise early on. Malik Hooker can be good at strong safety, but he really struggles with his health, and the team didn't pick up his 5th-year option, so... With the pass rush a lot better this season, the secondary will be okay, but they're going to need much more consistent play from a lot of guys. So depending on what Phillip Rivers does at quarterback, you're left with a team with a strong running game and a good defensive front 7. And in a division full of a lot of good but not great teams, I say the Colts go 9-7. But is that enough? I mean, surely the Titans are going to do better than that, right? Oh yes, the Jacksonville Jaguars. Finally, a team that's practically guaranteed to be a mess. You need teams like this in the NFL. They're going to be fun to watch, but for all the wrong reasons. The Jaguars are essentially tanking this season, and it's really not fair to pick on them. I mean, it would be like making fun of someone's house while they're still building the foundation. Trust the process. Wait a minute, I can't go out and spend money. I'm rebuilding. No new clothes. Not while I'm in rebuild mode. No, good food is going to have to wait till next year because... we're rebuilding. So it was an ugly season last year for the Jaguars as they seemingly just gave up on their coach. And while they thought their quarterback was going to be Nick Foles, they instead got Gardner Minshew and his mustache. Since Gardner was a 6th-round rookie on an awful team, his rather mediocre quarterback play was still objectively impressive. I mean, he did well for having absolutely nothing to work with. But he also got worse throughout the year, so who knows what we're getting from him this season. Since they drafted him in 2017, Leonard Fournette has been good at running back, but not quite as great as they'd hoped. This is almost certainly his last year with the team as they didn't pick up his 5th-year option, and there always seems to be some issue with him and his health, or his attitude, or his work ethic. Hey Leonard, so, how you doing? Oh, I'm doing well. You know, not pick up the 5th year of my contract well, but well enough. Fournette's not much of a receiver, so they got former Redskins Chris Thompson to work as the 3rd down back, but he's rarely healthy. Pretty good when he is, though. Wide receiver DJ Chark came out of nowhere and had a 1,000-yard season. Dede Westbrook and Chris Conley put up solid numbers, but are generally considered to be average NFL wide receivers. At tight end, Tyler Eifert seems to be a shell of his former self after just getting injured season after season. And after him, second-year tight end Josh Oliver missed most of his rookie season due to injury. Ooh, boy. And like most generally bad teams, the Jaguars had a bad offensive line. Cam Robinson was below average at left tackle. Andrew Norwell is good at left guard, but he is way overpaid. Brandon Linder is actually very good at center, but then AJ Kahn was lousy at right guard. And then rookie right tackle Juwan Taylor was average in pass protection, but really bad at run blocking. They're all coming back this season. As for their once fearsome defense, Yannick Ngakoue is clearly the best guy on the defensive line, but as of this recording has not signed his franchise tag and has been adamant that he wants a trade. Who can blame him? He's a good young pass rusher, but he struggles against the run, and to be honest, he's just asking for money he doesn't deserve. Since the Jags drafted a guy in the 1st round at his position, you had to figure they saw this coming. On a positive, last year's 1st round pick Josh Allen had a good rookie season. Their 1st round pick from 2018, Taven Bryan, hasn't been bad, but also hasn't quite lived up to his draft spot. So the D-line is middle of the road, possibly below average if Ngakoue doesn't play. Let's see, at linebacker you got an average journeyman type in Cassius Marsh. Considering that former Cleveland Brown Joe Sherbert is bad against the run and had a weak 2019, the Jaguars gave him a surprisingly generous contract in the offseason, which really contradicts the whole rebuild mentality. Then you got Miles Jack, who's generally very good, but had an injury-plagued season in 2019, so we'll call their linebacking group average. At quarterback, they drafted C.J. Henderson in the 1st round to play opposite a pretty lousy Trey Herndon. But DJ Hayden's been a solid slot corner. At strong safety, Ronnie Harrison hasn't been very good, but free safety Gerard Wilson had something of a breakout season. That's really the nicest thing you can say about their secondary, though. The pass defense is going to be bad. So since the Jaguars don't do anything especially well, it's going to be a very long 2020 season in Jacksonville. Enjoy the number 1 overall draft pick in 2021, Jaguars. Put it to good use, and don't trade down to the New England Patriots. The last thing the world needs is Bill Belichick getting the top prospect of the draft. He'll probably win 5 more Super Bowls. Going into just about every NFL season, you have one team that looks like they're bad enough to go 0-16. Last time around, it was the Miami Dolphins. And this year, yes, the Jaguars do look bad enough to lose every game. But I say the NFL is too topsy-turvy and wacky for that to happen. Somehow or another, no matter how generous it seems, I'm going to say the Jaguars go 3-13. Hey, I didn't say I was being that generous. And now the most exciting thing that came out of the AFC South in 2019, the Tennessee Titans. So after middling for years with Marcus Mariota at quarterback, getting 9-7 records, Ryan Tannehill comes in from Miami and ignites the team to a 9-7 record, but then took them into the playoffs and upset both the New England Patriots and the 14-2 Baltimore Ravens, earning a tremendous amount of goodwill with yours truly right here. They did this with a very complex offensive game plan of handing the ball to Derrick Henry 72 times a game. All right, offense. We got a tough game Sunday. Let's get down to X's and O's. Our game plan. Give the ball to Mr. Henry. All right, I'll see you boys Sunday. Now, this is a bit of a tricky team to analyze because in the playoffs, they did go completely run-heavy. And during the regular season, no question, Derrick Henry is essential to their team's success. But Tannehill had plenty of games where he put up impressive stat lines, occasionally throwing for over 300 yards. It's just like with many quarterbacks, he does that by having them set up the run, then they run play action, a lot of bootlegs, etc., etc. So Tannehill definitely had a good year, but looking at his overall career, you might want to temper expectations. It always seems lame to write off one year as an anomaly or a fluke, but I just can't shake the feeling that the Titans are going to regret giving Tannehill a rather lucrative contract. Not that they really had any choice but to try to keep him. Regardless, they do look set to ride Derrick Henry until his wheels fall off. He's a prime example of why running backs have such short careers. They drafted a guy in the 3rd round to hopefully relieve Henry of some snaps. Henry's been pretty healthy throughout his career, but I do worry about him. You can't have that big a guy getting tackled by other bigger guys 25 times a game and not expect a hamstring to tear occasionally. Something's going to happen to Henry. You watch. Henry's going to get injured this year. That's a weird thing to predict. I don't feel good saying that. But my crystal ball is telling me that Derrick Henry gets injured and the Titans suffer for it. The Titans have been struggling for years to fix their wide receiver group, but it actually looks pretty solid all of a sudden. A.J. Brown got off to a strong start, allowing Corey Davis to settle into the number 2 role, and then Adam Humphries at number 3. At tight end, Jonnu Smith's been good when he's gotten the ball, which was limited a little bit because of Delaney Walker's presence, but it gets murky after that. There's no real strong option at number 2. Now, as you would imagine for a power running team, the offensive line was good. Taylor Lewin's a good left tackle. Roger Saffold at left guard has been consistent, although he actually got off to a rough start last season. But he straightened that out. Meanwhile, Ben Jones has gotten really good at center. But then on the right side, Nate Davis had a rough first year at guard. And they lost their bedrock at right tackle, Jack Conklin, to the Cleveland Browns. They're trying to replace him with a first-round pick from this year's draft. Basically, that right side of the line's a little troubling, especially for a team that leans so heavily on their running game. If your whole strategy for beating good teams is, we're going to take our big guys and smash them against your big guys, and you're not going to be able to stop ours, you really need a good O-line. The defense oddly ranked 11th in points allowed despite being 12th against the run and 24th against the pass. This year on the defensive line, Jarrell Casey will be missed. Jeffrey Simmons, going into his 2nd year, showed some flashes when he wasn't injured, and Daquan Jones is much better against the run than the pass. And while Isaiah Mack was kind of he was an undrafted rookie free agent, so he may yet improve. So their pass rush really needs some juice, but maybe with health and experience it'll get a little bit better. Maybe. So they bought low to bring in Vic Beasley at outside linebacker. He isn't what he once was, but he's still only 28 and does get a good amount of sacks. Jayon Brown is a good coverage inside linebacker. Rashaan Evans improved drastically in his 2nd year and made some big plays in big moments, but could still stand to improve some. In fact, you could pretty much say the same thing on the outside with Harold Landry. I'd say they've got a slightly above average group of linebackers. At corner, Malcolm Butler was injured for the second half of the year. Logan Ryan left the team team, but will be replaced by a very capable Adoree Jackson. And then they got Houston Texan Jonathan Joseph to be number 3 on the depth chart. He's okay. Kevin Byard has been the man at free safety for quite some time now. Kenny Vaccaro is considerably less exciting at strong safety. He's better at stuffing the run than in pass coverage. So the defense strikes me as average, maybe a touch below. So obviously, if the Titans keep rolling like they were at the end of last year, then heck yeah, they're due for another playoff run. But this incarnation of the Titans has a very 2016 Jacksonville Jaguars with Blake Bortles kind of vibe to it. Although, don't get me wrong, I would take Ryan Tannehill over Blake Bortles in a heartbeat. Something's going to happen. Either defenses are going to watch enough tape on Tannehill to completely shut him down, or they'll figure out something to do against Henry, or Henry gets injured. And since the defense doesn't inspire a ton of confidence, that would be the Titans' undoing. Mike Vrabel's just too good of a head coach to let the Titans be really bad, but I'm going to roll the dice and say that the Titans take a step backward this year. After going 9-7 forever, I say the Tennessee Titans of 2020 go 8-8, which means that, wait, what? I've got the Indianapolis Colts winning the AFC South at 9-7. Oh boy, exciting. Very fitting for the AFC South. Then the Tennessee Titans go 8-8. The Houston Texans go 7-9. And the Jacksonville Jaguars are 3-13. Let me know in the comment section what you think. This division always has so many middle-of-the-road teams that duke it out until the end for playoff contention. Tell me what you expect of Phillip Rivers and if the Texans are going to be as mediocre as I think they will be. Am I completely ridiculous for not thinking the Titans are going to go 12-4? Please like the video, subscribe to my channel. Thank you for watching. Enigma out.